Okay, take two. So, we're going to talk about a few things today. It's been a while since I did a geopolitics video, but I had an important. The only reason I would make a video right now is because I think I have something to add to this conversation. But let's get over at what's going on in the world first. Just a brief overview, especially today on Sunday, the 3rd of December. A lot's going on. There was the attack on some cargo ships and then a U.S. Navy ship right there at the. I don't think it's the Straits of Hormuz, but it's another strait, the strait going into the Black Sea. So some Yemeni forces are starting to attack ships going through the Straits of Hormuz. They are saying that they're doing this as retaliation for what's going on in Gaza. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel has assumed their military operations in earnest, and they seem to have picked up right where they left off. They're just, it seems like they're indiscriminately bombing civilians to me. That's my take on it. Uh, there's there's images out there all over Twitter. They're not really being censored. Um, and it's really heartbreaking to see. And so Israel went back to indiscriminately bombing. As I said from the outset of this, it was a big mistake for Israel to go into this situation thinking that the United States could diplomatically shield them from all criticism. As we see, the United States is not in a position to shield Israel. So Israel's just going to go on doing what it's doing, and it's not going to work out for them in the long run. Let's just put it that way. That's my sense of it. And then we had this happen here. I guess, was this today? Let's see. When was this released? This is December 3rd. Okay, yeah. So today, apparently Stoltenberg, the number one Ukraine grifting shill of all, who has a lot riding on this war, said prepare for bad news coming out of Ukraine. Well, if you've been watching what's going on in Ukraine, you already knew that there was a lot of bad news coming out for Ukraine. It's starting to dawn on people who either aren't engaged or who have been, stuck in the delusions for a year and a half. It's starting to dawn on people that the war is not going well. I mean, it really hasn't been going well at all. The last good thing that the last, success Ukraine had was the victory in Kharkiv when they, rolled over the Russians and forced the Russians to retreat. There hasn't been really any good news since then, if you're being honest. But here comes Stoltenberg, the number one shill, who just a week ago was talking all this shit that Ukraine's gonna win. Now he's on here doing a complete 180. So it set the whole Ukraine shill space on Twitter into a complete panic, and it's fun to watch. I mean, I don't feel sorry for these people with these sock puppet accounts that are probably getting paid by PR agencies through third parties. I feel bad for the people of Ukraine. I'll show you who I feel bad for in a minute. Here's who I feel bad for right now. I feel bad for turn that down. Women in Ukraine being sent to the front lines. That's who I feel bad for. I don't feel bad for any of the politicians that really should be hung for this, but they're all going to be taken care of. But I don't feel bad for whatever happens to them. I don't feel bad for any of the Ukrainian politicians. This is who I feel bad for. They're drafting women or strongly suggesting that they join the military, I'm sure. Even if they're not outright drafted, I'm sure they don't have much of a choice in this situation. And these young ladies are being sent to the front line. I mean, this is insane. Nothing like this has happened maybe since World War II. You don't see this kind of shit since the Germans, with their Volkssturm battalions back in World War II. And even then, we'll see the extent to which this goes. But this is absolutely the depths of depravity right here. And I want to explain something, too. This is why I wanted to make this video. Here we have Lloyd Austin. This report's on November 20th, so about a week and a half ago. He went to Ukraine, and the headline says he's re-emphasizing support for Ukraine. Okay, so he went there and he said, we're going to support you. But what he really went there for, when he says we are re-emphasizing our support for you, what they're telling Ukraine to do, essentially, is to continue the war. Just continue the war because we're going to be there to back you up. Obviously, if they said we're not going to back you up, Ukraine would be more likely to stop fighting the war. So this is their way of suggesting or pushing Ukraine to continue the war. They're saying, we're going to support you, even though we're not. And then, because of that, you end up with this. You end up with Ukraine, the Ukraine government, sending female soldiers. Look at her. Look at her. What is she, like 22 years? I mean, it makes me want to cry. It really does. She's going to go, and they're bragging about it here. Here we have Ukrainian fucking loser squad. Ukrainian women are moving to the front lines to defend their freedom. And this is not the first video of women I've seen on the front lines. I've seen several already, and they're getting more and more common every day. And what I want to make the connection here is the United States is involved in this. The United States government. You see, here we have Lloyd Austin telling the Ukrainians to push on. They're not telling the Ukrainians, oh, don't use women soldiers, please. If the United States wanted to, they could demand to Zelensky, we're not going to, if you draft female soldiers and send them to the front line, we are going to cut you off completely. Okay? If they would just say that, there would be no women going to the front line. You can guarantee yourself that. But here we have Lloyd Austin pushing the Ukrainians, coercing the Ukrainians, essentially, hanging money over their faces, over these scumbag politicians' faces, and saying, hey, continue the war. We're going to keep sending you money. And then you end up with poor women from probably some podunk fucking town or the wrong side of Kiev. I hate it when I say Kiev. From the wrong side of Kiev, being sent to the front line. And maybe she looks happy, right? Maybe she looks happy. I'm telling you what. If she was on there, she's not going to be allowed to make a video where she looks pissed off. Let's just get that straight. We've already seen plenty of instances of people being shot by their own Ukrainian soldiers being shot by other Ukrainian sort of enforcers and political soldiers. Okay, this is the depth of depravity. This is the most cynical, disgusting thing. And I just want to say one more time, this is your government, Americans, doing this. Okay? And there's plenty more videos out there. Now, what's happening here goes to my next situation I wanted to bring up. If I can find it, I may have to pause it. No, I got it right here. Okay. So we have this Guardian article here. So here we have something very interesting. So this article, here's the headline for anyone to search it. So basically what happened is the mobilization, the recruiting drive, which is basically forced conscription. We've all seen videos of young men, and now I guess young women, being taken off the streets, kidnapped, put in a uniform, given a gun, given minimal training, and sent to the front line. We've seen this for over a year. So now the recruiters, according to this article, are complaining that they can't recruit enough soldiers. And what's happening is they're afraid to recruit those soldiers. See, Zelensky's asking them, hey, why? There were all these charges of corruption with the recruiting side of the military, right? And the way the media framed it is, oh, the recruiters are taking bribes so that people, that give them a little money end up not having to go to war, right? Well, it's even worse than that, because what's happening is the recruiters are afraid to recruit people, because some of the recruiters in Ukraine, some of these local recruiters that are part of, like, the Ukrainian National Guard or the local police or whatever, they're getting murdered by angry family members. So now the recruiters are like, yo, we don't want to do this job anymore, right? Like, this is not worth it, right? And so what's happening now is US based and European based recruiting contractors are going to be hired, well, paid for by the Europeans to work in Ukraine to kidnap people off the streets. So what we have are Western companies, okay, that are going to, hire people from all over the world, send them to the Ukraine, and those people are going to kidnap people off the streets. And this is a very important thing. See, so what's happening here is they're building an infrastructure of transnational recruiting companies that I guarantee you they will use again in the future. This is a test run, okay? They're going to start creating these companies, okay? Now, once Ukraine is over and everybody is dead in Ukraine except for the boomers who sent their entire, families to war to get their pensions, by the way, that's besides the point. Once Ukraine is done, okay, everybody's trying to forget about it, eventually those recruiting companies will be used in Europe. I can see a draft being initiated, and there's already a draft in Germany. I mean, it's only a matter of time before Germany or one of these, I hope not. Hopefully Germany just wipes out the SPD and the CDU and goes all AfD. I am not an AfD fan, which is the Alternative for Deutschland party. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of any political party. But, I mean, the only thing that's going to save Germany right now is just straight up nothing but Alternative for Deutschland. Anyway, I'm going in a million different directions. But I wanted to raise the alarm here. We're starting to see private military contractors that are recruiting companies, which basically means they're sort of like corporate press gangs. These are corporate, legally sanctioned kidnappers, and they're going to start using them in Ukraine, which is going to be interesting. We'll see how that works. And I could see this. This isn't the last time people are going to see these recruiting companies. And this can get really out of hand really quick with recruiting companies. What if they just start going to random countries and, in Bangladesh or whatever, and just scooping people off the streets? They can get away with that. Pay off some local officials and scoop people off the streets. So this is interesting. It's like a form of human trafficking, really. Legally sanctioned and corporatized. So the main point of my video, though, let me see what else I wanted to get into. So we got that. The main thing I wanted to get into is I wanted to make the connection between this encouragement of Ukraine to continue the war, when right now they should be begging for a ceasefire and begging for peace from Russia, right? But here we have the United States coercing them, essentially, into continuing the war, okay? Then we have female soldiers being sent to the front line. That is your government, Americans. That is your government, okay? And that's you who are responsible for that as an American. Okay, that's your fault. This is you genociding the Ukrainian people. Because this is a democracy, isn't it? So isn't the government really a reflection of American society? Don't we vote for these people? So this must be what you want, American. You must want women to be drafted and sent to the front line where their life expectancy is really short. If you didn't want it, then why'd you elect these people? And why are you going to elect them again next year? That's even the better question, because you will, Americans. Okay, so that's it. That shit pisses me off. That really makes me angry. I even know normies that when they see this sort of shit and I show them the sort of shit, they're shocked. You know, complete normies. Uh, so quickly, Gaza has continued. This was like a report from a couple days ago, but from what I'm seeing in Gaza, so Gaza has continued. I mean, Israel is continuing this um, just depraved bombing campaign. I think I just heard about a hospital getting bombed again, and it's just a wholesale massacre. So the genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza continues. Now, this is the second report I've seen right here. A former ICC prosecutor says his assessment is this is legally genocide under the Geneva Convention, under the Nuremberg Code, and all of that. And there was a UN human rights lawyer who also said that what Israel is doing is genocide by the legal definition. For anybody who thinks that it's not, just look at the Armenian genocide, which we all accept was a genocide by the Turks on the Armenians at the turn of around the 1920s time. Okay. Now, the Turks didn't put the Armenians into death camps and all that. What they did is they violently forced the Armenians out of their territory, okay, and ended up causing the deaths of over 1 million Armenians, allegedly. Okay? That is considered genocide under the legal definition. And what Israel is doing right now in Gaza is, by the legal definition, genocide. And it just really gets me how we were crying and, you know, alligator tears about Vladimir Putin's alleged genocide, which there was none. I mean, I have a really, this is like an example right here of, you know, a fake story about Russian genocide. None of this actually happened. This is all, none of this evidence that they say is actually real evidence. And we were crying crocodile tears for 1.5 years about Vladimir Putin committing genocide in Ukraine when far less, now only half, only 9,000 civilians, according to the UN, have died in Ukraine, in the Ukraine war, as a result of either side, whether the Russians or the Ukrainians. And I guarantee you a lot of those are going to be Ukrainian responsibility, civilian deaths. 9,000. We're close to 20,000 in Gaza right now, and we know who did most of the civilian deaths there, who's responsible, and it's Israel, and no one even disputes that. So in 2 months, you've killed twice as many civilians as the amount of civilians that have died in Ukraine due to directly due to the war. Okay, so I just can't get over the hypocrisy. It's like, do people, I mean, a lot of Americans get it on Gaza. They never got it on Ukraine, but they get it on Gaza. But for the people that don't get it, like, how do you reconcile being such a hypocrite? From going from Putin is a genocidal bastard to, oh, well, Israel has to defend themselves. When somebody robs a bank, and let's say they do an armed robbery, okay, and they accidentally kill somebody, they get away, or they run away. Okay, now if you're the police department, how do you handle that? Do you go search for the guy and apprehend the guy? Or wherever he is? Maybe he ran back to his house. Okay, let's say the guy ran back to his house. So do you go to the guy's house and apprehend the guy and take him to jail? Or do you just kill everybody in his house, his wife, his children, or whatever? Okay? Is that what you do? I don't think so. When someone does something bad, you don't punish everybody around them for it. So I don't get where this disconnect really is here. I mean, when we went to Afghanistan post 9/11, we didn't kill everybody in Kabul or just start carpet bombing Kabul. We did kill a lot of civilians in Iraq, But in Afghanistan, we were going after specifically, especially in the beginning, we were going after Al Qaeda. We didn't carpet bomb Kabul. We didn't bomb hospitals in Kabul. Okay, we went for the Al Qaeda people because they were the ones that committed the terrorism, not the civilians in Kabul. The same could be said here. And I'm seeing all sorts of justifications. I saw one, oh, wow, 75% of people in Gaza support Hamas. Okay, so that means you're allowed to kill them now? Because they answered yes to a poll that they support or somewhat, because it was somewhat support or support strongly. And about 75% said that they support at least somewhat. So that's reason to kill people indiscriminately. So I don't get this. It's just, looking at the world today, people might ask the question, what's going on in the world? Why is everything sort of lighting up? Why are fires popping up all over the place? I mean, you had the attacks on shipping this morning by the Yemenese army. They were attacking U.S. destroyers and Israeli ships headed for Israel. You have Venezuela and Guyana, who are looking like they might go to war over a territorial dispute that, of course, the British Empire helped create before they, back in the 1800s. As usual, the British fucked that up. And so you have Venezuela and Guyana looking like they're going to get into a shooting match, or looking like it could happen. And you got Exxon in the mix that wants to develop some oil. So it's really about oil. So you got all this shit going on in the world. You still got the Taiwan issue hanging in the background. You have North Korea, Kim Jong-un, he's mouthing off, of course. He's getting pretty bold. And people are asking, what's going on? Why is all this shit happening now? And it's very simple. And I said it in previous videos, okay? I said it from the beginning, before the war in Ukraine even started. I said the war in Ukraine was going to be a disaster, and it has been a disaster. And what the rest of the world sees, regardless of whether Americans want to admit it or not to themselves, what the rest of the world sees is that the United States, with all of its money, all of its advanced weaponry, could not defeat the Russians in Ukraine. They didn't even have, they had an unlimited pool of soldiers. They can't produce enough weapons to keep up with Russia. Their weapons that were supposed to be so advanced are easily countered by the Russians. What the rest of the world sees is that the big bully on the playground is actually a big pussy. That's what the rest of the world sees. And now these fires are starting to light up all over the world. Venezuela, Maduro, he's like, well, what better time is there than now to get into this? If Maduro wanted to take this strip of land back from Guyana, what better time than now? Really? What better time than now? I mean, the United States is in disarray. It has no leadership. It's overextended. It's distracted by Ukraine and Israel. It's got an election coming up. And we have perhaps one of the worst presidents, especially in foreign policy, that we've ever had in history. What better time than now than to attack Guyana? So, and then here's the other issue. The United States has been going around the world for the past 30 years as the dominant hegemon of the world, the most powerful country, and they've been telling everybody, you have to follow this rule, you have to follow that rule, you have to follow the rules, you have to look, the international law, human civil rights, democracy, oh, you need to have a democracy, which was always a big grift anyway. But what's happened over the years is the United States has violated its own rules over and over and over again. And now everybody's saying, well, the United States is weak. They never follow the rules anyway. So I'm going to break the rules too. And I'm going to get what I can and get it while the getting's good. And that's what they're doing. So that's what's happening to this world. I said from the beginning with Ukraine, it's going to be an unmitigated disaster because our diplomatic stance, our diplomatic standing has been destroyed. And that's the main reason why Israel is not able to, massacre civilians with impunity. The United States is not strong enough to shield Israel from the criticism that it's getting right now. Okay, I think I'm out.